NCATS stands for the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. And I'm the first to admit that's a really boring name. And but our mission and the reason for our founding is really pretty ambitious, and it's based on the big problem statement that we all know, which is just takes way too long to develop new drugs, and it's way too expensive. You know, the numbers that people mostly quote are the ones from Tufts. And I think the latest is it's still taking something like 14 years to make a new drug from soup to nuts. And I think the overall cost is pegged at something like 2.6 billion. So given that there are something like, let's say, 7,000 diseases where we know the molecular cause, and there are only about 500 treatments so far to those diseases, and we're only making new treatments at a rate of 2 or 3 per year, you can do the math. At 14 years each, 2.6 billion, it's going to take centuries and trillions of dollars to be able to come up with new drugs for the majority of diseases. And of course, the vast majority of those diseases are rare diseases. And the vast majority of the rare diseases are rare enough, that is, the prevalence is under, let's say, 1,000 or a few thousand patients in the United States, that there's no real commercial proposition. You know, there's no value proposition to drive private investment. So what are we going to do? You know, how are we going to come up with treatments for these thousands of rare diseases at that timeline and that expense? And so that's really the mission statement of NCATS, is to figure out how do we improve the system, the very technology and scientific and technical basis of making new drugs and testing them out to make sure that they work and are safe in clinical studies. And it's a vastly ambitious goal. But the end result, if we can make a dent in it, is to make this whole process cheaper and faster and more accessible to all patients. But on the preclinical side, which is the part that I'm involved in, one of the first and major goals is to really try to address what's very often called the valley of death in the drug development business. And this is the period in between when basic research first nominates and identifies a potential drug candidate, and when that drug candidate is first shown to have benefit in people. So in the jargon, it would be late stage preclinical development. So from the first time that you have to start optimizing a drug lead candidate for all the other non-scientific but clinically critical features, such as safety, the convenience of being able to be taken as a pill, you know, et cetera, to develop all those technological and pharmaceutical sides of a new drug candidate, get them into clinical trial, having FDA approving the preclinical package and testing for safety, and then at least through phase 2 to test for the first signs that the drug might be working. And so that's called the valley of death, because the failure rate there across the industry is something easily, depending on how you calculate, easily 90% or 99% in that whole process. So private investment is very hard to get. And quite frankly, our entire research infrastructure in the United States mostly emphasizes basic research. That's the problem of the valley of death that at least my group at NCATS, the Therapeutic Development Branch, is really designed to take on. So it's a collaborative model. It's not a grant, because it's not just money, it's expertise. So what we have is a group of around 60 people, and we're kind of like a giant Swiss Army knife of all the different scientific disciplines and expertises that you need to put together the entire preclinical development package for submission to the FDA. So whatever part of the preclinical development package or expertise you don't already have, we can fill in, and together we'll put together a project plan and complete all the studies necessary for completing the IND package, the investigational new drug package that you need to submit to the FDA to get approval for human testing. So that's a long account, but this is such a critical piece. This is the huge gating step that kills 99% of new drug ideas, not because they're bad ideas, but because from an enterprise point of view, from building the team that you need to get that drug idea converted into a drug that can be tested in the humans. That's such a heavy lift that most of the time it doesn't work out. And so we're there to kind of absorb that risk and provide those resources at no cost in order to promote the entire pipeline. And we have a particular focus in rare disease because it's a special problem in rare disease, again, because there's no obvious commercial value proposition for most rare diseases.